Picture this. You are a servant in the palace of Luoyang, year 693 AD. You crouch in a narrow passage, the faint scent of sandalwood barely masking the staleness of old incense and sweat. Your fingers are numb against the cold lacquered floor. Through the carved screen ahead, the honeyed flicker of candlelight plays across silken drapes, casting moving shadows that seem to breathe. Somewhere behind you, distant footsteps echo on stone. Deliberate, measured, impossible to misinterpret. Tonight, every sound carries a threat. Inside the chamber beyond, the woman they call the Divine Empress holds court, though the court is not what anyone dares imagine. You don't know if you've been summoned for your skill with a lute, your delicate hands, or simply your youth. You flinch as the doors slide open, silk panels whispering against wood. The eunuch who gestures you forward wears a mask of blank serenity, but his eyes avoid yours. In this palace, those who look too long are rumored to vanish. The air is thick with the perfume of peonies, overripe and suffocating. The skin on your neck prickles. You cross the threshold and bow, lower than you ever have, nose nearly touching the mat. Above you, the shadow of the Empress stretches, impossibly tall. She reclines on a dais of gold and jade, robed in violet that shimmers like water at dusk. Her eyes find yours, unreadable and cold as a riverstone's. Your heart pounds so hard, you worry it will betray you. The only sound is the gentle chime of bangles as the Empress lifts her hand. You can feel the gaze of a dozen courtiers behind her, faces hidden behind veils, lips curved in slight, knowing smiles. You sense something is terribly wrong. This is not the world of porcelain dolls and garden poetry the scrolls promised. The air here crackles with the tension of a bowstring drawn tight. There is nowhere to run, not in this chamber, not in this world. Your fate is not your own. Think the first and only female emperor of China was a gentle reformer? That Wu Zetian's palace was a sanctuary of female empowerment, a rare triumph in a man's world? What you're about to discover will shatter that illusion. The reality behind these golden screens would make the stories of Machiavelli's Florence look like child's play. Forget the polite myth of a wise woman outwitting scheming courtiers. The truth reeks of cold terror, obsession, and ritualized humiliation. Her reign makes the most depraved tales of Roman emperors seem almost quaint. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. In the Tang dynasty, power was always intimate. Sex was not just pleasure or sin, it was a weapon, a currency, a test. In Wu Zetian's palace, your body is both shield and target. To serve in her night chambers is to walk a knife's edge, where a single wrong glance could mean banishment, torture, or worse. Historical records show that court officials were selected for beauty as much as wit, their loyalty measured not only in clever counsel, but in how willingly they surrendered their dignity at the Empress's feet. It's easy to imagine the Empress surrounded by poets and philosophers, debating the classics in the candlelit hush of the Hall of Supreme Clarity. But beneath the surface, every night is a reckoning. Think modern office politics are cutthroat. The secret chamber, recorded by chroniclers like Zhang Changzong and attested in both Chinese annals and Japanese envoys' diaries, served as the stage for selection rituals that could destroy families in an instant. Female attendants were subjected to examinations by senior eunuchs. Male musicians and even princes were summoned for whispered interviews. their fate determined by the flicker of the Empress's mood. If you failed to impress, you vanished, sometimes sent to distant provinces, sometimes never seen again. But here's where it gets worse. Survival isn't just about pleasing Wu Zetian herself. The palace is thick with spies, eunuchs, former rivals, even Buddhist monks, all hungry for a slip, a rumor, a hint of disloyalty. Confessions are wrung out behind closed doors. Intimate letters are intercepted, poems decoded for subversion. The Empress's agents catalog the habits of every servant, every consort, every rival wife, how they dress, who they visit, what they whisper in the dark. Even the smallest detail can become ammunition in the endless struggle for favor. A misplaced hairpin, a torn robe, a glance exchanged in the corridor, everything is evidence. According to the Old Book of Tang, Wu Zetian herself orchestrated these games of humiliation, using sex as both reward and punishment. She elevated men like the notorious Zhang Yiji and Zhang Changzong from lowly positions to absolute power, not for merit, but for their beauty and service, as chroniclers delicately put it. Rival concubines were forced to compete for her amusement, sometimes in poetry, sometimes in far more degrading displays. The Empress's son, the future Emperor Zhongzong, once wrote that not even a prince could rest easy in the shadow of her pillow. But few outside the palace ever understood the price of such proximity. What you don't know is how deep the rot goes. The architecture of the Tang Palace itself was shaped by the Empress's need for control. Hallways twist unexpectedly, doors lead to hidden chambers, gardens are walled off for secret rendezvous and sudden disappearances. To survive is to learn the rules before you even know you're being tested. The Hall of Eternal Life, soaring, gilded, open to the night, becomes a prison once the sun sets, a place where you hear the distant shouts of punishment, the muffled cries of those who failed to entertain or obey. The tapestries and screens do little to muffle the sounds. What they never teach in school is the true meaning of survival under Empress Wu. You must become invisible and unforgettable, silent and yet always performing. Every day is a new audition, every night a trial without verdict. You can be called to the nectar chamber to serve wine, to play music, or, if rumor holds true, to offer far more. Some never come back, others return, eyes hollow, lips sealed forever. And now, the Empress herself beckons you forward. Her painted lips curl. The flick of her sleeve signals your time has come. You step forward, knees trembling, unsure if tonight brings favor or ruin. You can feel the weight of every eye upon you. Rival consorts hoping for your downfall. Eunuchs measuring your fear. The screen falls behind you with a whisper. The scent of peonies grows almost sickly sweet. Somewhere deep in the palace, a bell tolls, announcing the hour when secrets become currency and innocence is nothing but a memory. But just as you begin to speak, the Empress leans in, her voice soft as a blade. Tell me, how far are you willing to go for your family's honor? The air freezes. Your fate, like that of so many before, is about to be decided in the darkness behind the golden screens. And you realize, with a chill in your veins, that in Wu Zetian's palace, surrender is the only rule. And tonight, the game has only just begun. You kneel, barely daring to breathe as Wu Zetian studies you with that famous, impassive stare. Her voice is soft, yet somehow it fills the room. Beauty is fragile. Loyalty is rarer still. With a flick of her finger, you're instructed to pour her wine. Your hands shake as you obey, careful not to spill a single drop. This is no simple hospitality. Every gesture is a test, every word a potential trap. All around, the velvet silence presses down. From behind a lacquered screen, you sense the scrutiny of other eyes. Rival consorts hoping you'll falter, eunuchs cataloging your every move. The ritual begins. The empress gestures to the shadows, and a string of courtiers, hand-picked for their youth and allure, file silently into the chamber. Each is required to recite lines of Tang poetry or perform a delicate dance, but the performances are just a prelude. You realize with a cold jolt that you're being evaluated for more than talent. This is a selection, a ritualized display in which your value is measured by how convincingly you embody desire, fear, and submission. But here's where it gets worse. Failure is unthinkable. As each candidate finishes, the eunuchs note down Wu Zetian's reactions, marking those who elicit only a flicker of boredom for reassignment. There are rumors, always denied, never forgotten, that some will be sent to the Silent Pavilion, a wing of the palace from which no laughter ever emerges. Even the wind seems to avoid its windows. Suddenly, the doors open again. Two musicians are marched in, heads bowed so low you can barely see their faces. The lead eunuch, Zhang Changzong, a man whose power is legendary, his beauty whispered about in forbidden poetry, stands to deliver the next test. In a practiced tone, he announces, "Tonight, Her Divine Majesty wishes to be entertained in every sense. Only those who please her will remain in the Hall of Eternal Life." You feel your heart pounding as the musicians begin to play. The melody is haunting, but Wu Zetian's gaze never leaves their trembling hands. "History records," she murmurs, "that art and pleasure are the foundation of empire." But her eyes are fixed on the younger of the two, whose hands quiver as he strikes the strings. You watch as the Empress's smile grows, delighted or perhaps calculating. You can't tell which is worse, but the true ordeal is still to come. Zhang Changzong, at her signal, steps forward to recite the evening's orders. All present will participate in the Nectar Chamber's ritual. The phrase sends a cold wave down your spine. Chroniclers in the Old Book of Tang and foreign envoys in their secret diaries record these assemblies. Nights when Wu Zetian summoned hand-picked courtiers, male and female, for loyalty trials in which performance was everything, and refusal was a death sentence. Those who passed would be elevated, showered with jade and silk, sometimes even new titles. Those who hesitated faced public humiliation or simply disappeared. Here's what they don't tell you in the official histories. The ritual is less about pleasure and more about submission. The chamber is arranged like a theater, a low bed draped in golden cloth, surrounded by cushions where the Empress reclines, her face unreadable in the candlelight. One by one, each courtier is summoned to kneel, to serve, to obey. You are told exactly where to place your hands, when to bow, what to say. You sense that you are being watched not just by the living, but by the generations of Tang rulers whose painted faces glare from the screens above. As the ritual proceeds, the atmosphere shifts from tense anticipation to something darker. The Empress's laughter rings out, high and sharp, whenever a candidate falters. A woman slips during a dance. The court giggles as she's ushered out by two silent eunuchs. A young scholar recites the wrong verse. He's forced to apologize at Wu Zetian's feet. "Do you know," she intones, "that the price of a mistake in my court is not merely shame, but obliteration?" No one dares to breathe. But here's the revelation that would horrify any outsider. These assemblies aren't just tests of sensuality, they are weapons of control. The secret chamber rituals are designed to break the will, to erase boundaries between body and state, to make loyalty a matter of flesh as much as mind. Those who perform best are rewarded with special tokens: a jade comb, a crimson robe, a promise of access to the emperor's inner circle. But the true prize is survival. Tonight, you find yourself called to the center. The eunuch announces your name with ceremony. You kneel, bowing lower than ever. Wu Zetian's voice is barely above a whisper, but her words cut deeper than a blade. In this palace, love is submission. Pleasure is proof of obedience. Do you understand? You nod, not trusting yourself to speak. Somewhere in the dark, you hear the faint whimper of someone who answered incorrectly. The ritual continues late into the night. At its climax, the Empress signals for silence. The tension is so thick, you feel as though the entire court is holding its breath. Then, in a gesture both regal and chilling, she calls for a new test, one whispered about by generations of palace survivors. Tonight, a favored concubine is commanded to choose between betraying a friend or facing the chamber of silence. The choice is no choice at all. Loyalty is redefined. Trust dies a quick death. You see now that this is the true machinery of Wu Zetian's power. Desire is a trap. Obedience is enforced not just through law, but through ritualized humiliation. Every night is a trial. Every favor is a threat. The pleasure assemblies become the very crucible of imperial survival, where the only way to rise is to submit fully, body and soul. But just as the ritual reaches its fever pitch, Wu Zetian turns, her voice low and cold. "Remember, all things beautiful are destined for destruction in my house." The words settle like a curse. Your knees ache, your heart hammers, but you have survived, for now. Now that you've witnessed how Empress Wu Zetian wielded sexual humiliation as an instrument of absolute control, you're beginning to see the patterns hidden in history's shadows. If uncovering these buried truths resonates with your need to understand the real human experience behind the myths, subscribe now. You'll never miss these deep dives into history's darkest realities, and you'll be first to confront the forbidden. Stories that shaped our world. Because as the candles gutter and the ritual ends, you realize, in Wu Zetian's palace, dawn brings no comfort. Only the next test, and the next survivor's tale awaits. You wake with a jolt to the hollow clatter of bamboo clappers in the corridor. The night's ritual has faded, but the dread remains, coiled in your gut, pulsing behind your eyes. Servants drift through the palace with downcast gazes, careful to avoid the wrong turn. In Wu Zetian's world, even sunrise brings no safety. The memory of the nectar chamber's ordeal lingers in every muscle, every shiver of your skin. You know the Empress never sleeps. Her power does not rest. The bureaucracy of pleasure is already in motion. Outside your chamber, the chief eunuch, Zhang Changzong, is reading from a list. Each name is marked, promoted, reassigned, or erased. You glimpse the flash of red ink beside a musician's name. A hush falls as his absence is noticed. He was there last night, wasn't he? The one who played with trembling hands? Now, nothing but silence and a newly vacant corner in the musician's quarters. But here's where it gets worse. In this palace, sexual favor is currency. Survival depends on mastering the labyrinthine bureaucracy Wu Zetian created. She doesn't simply indulge whims, she institutionalizes them. The machinery of her reign is designed to transform intimacy into administration, desire into evidence, pleasure into a record to be weighed and judged. In the Hall of Radiant Clarity, the morning assembly is underway. Wu sits at the apex, robed in resplendent yellow, her features cool and unyielding. By her side stand the infamous Zhang brothers, Zhang Yizhi and Zhang Changzong, elevated not by blood, but by the special services the old Book of Tong dares to mention only in the most euphemistic terms. Every courtier knows their story. Summoned from obscurity for their beauty, kept in power by their willingness to submit. Their influence is both open secret and weapon. No petition, no policy, no appointment occurs without their silent nod. The records don't lie. Poems by Wu herself, inscribed with imperial seals, hint at nights spent testing the loyalty of the bedchamber. The secret records of the palace, compiled by ministers desperate to make sense of chaos, describe a system of recruitment that extends far beyond the palace walls. Agents scour the city for fresh faces, artisans' sons, merchant daughters, even foreign envoys, anyone whose appearance might amuse the Empress, or worse, threaten her sense of control. You watch as a new group of candidates is paraded before the court. Each must demonstrate not only skill, but total submission. The selection process is precise. A glance, a gesture, the tone of a voice, all dissected by senior eunuchs and relayed in secret reports. Fail to impress, and you may find yourself reassigned to the kitchens or exiled to a distant province. Please the Empress, and your family's fortunes might rise, at least for a season. But here's the detail almost no historian will say out loud. The lines between loyalty, intimacy, and surveillance are intentionally blurred. The Zhang brothers are not just favorites. They are instruments of control. They monitor the movements of rival princes, the whispers of concubines, the gifts sent by ambitious officials. Their bedroom becomes an extension of the throne room. Confessions extracted by pillow talk, secrets traded in exchange for one more night of favor. Documentary anchors abound. Shangguan Wan'er, the poet's secretary, kept her own coded diaries, now partially deciphered. She records the terror of being summoned after dark, the pressure to compose verses praising the Empress's divine sensuality, the silent wars between consorts for a single hour in Wu's inner circle. Even Crown Prince Li Xian, Wu Zetian's own son, fell victim to this regime, demoted, exiled, accused of plotting rebellion in the privacy of his own bedchamber. In the Empress's palace, no love is safe, no desire unmonitored. But the most chilling revelation emerges in the silent corridors between midnight and dawn. You learn that a new loyalty test is underway, a spycraft so refined it feels almost invisible. Eunuchs deliver coded messages. Servants slip bribes between layers of silk. The Empress rewards those who reveal the unworthy among their peers. Sometimes she engineers betrayals for sport, pitting friend against friend, lover against lover, just to see who will break first. One evening, you're summoned to a secret tribunal. The secret records describe these gatherings as shadows within shadows, half-lit rooms, incense thick as fog, a masked interrogator reciting names and accusations. Each question is a trap. You answer as best you can, hands shaking, mind racing through every conversation you've ever had. What did you say about the Empress last night? Did anyone hear you complain of the cold? A wrong answer means vanishing without trace. The right answer means surviving, at least until next time. But here's where the palace machinery becomes truly monstrous. The psychological torment is constant. No boundary is safe. The legal codes are twisted, reshaped, to justify the Empress's pleasure as the ultimate good. Rituals once meant for ancestor veneration are co-opted as tests of devotion to her person. You realize that terror and intimacy are now inseparable. Love itself has become a threat. In the end, every bond is suspect. Even a private smile can be grounds for denunciation. To survive in Wu Zetian's court, you must master the art of erasing yourself, becoming both invisible and indispensable. You cling to routine, bow, serve, smile when commanded, never speak above a whisper. Every day you survive is a victory, every night a test. The next summons could bring ruin or fleeting reward. But as you stumble back to your quarters, you remember Shangguan Wanner's words, scratched into the wood beneath her desk. In the palace of the dragon, no love escapes the net. And as the torches sputter and dawn creeps through the lattice, you wonder, how many more will the Empress consume before she is finally satisfied? In Wu Zetian's world, there is no such thing as innocence, only the next performance and the next night to endure. Morning comes with no relief, only a heavier silence. You walk the cloistered galleries of Luoyang, each step echoing between crimson columns and shadowed doorways. The palace is awake, but hushed. You see courtiers with downcast eyes, officials reviewing scrolls with trembling hands, palace women exchanging hurried whispers before the painted screens. No one lingers. Today, word spreads. There will be a bedchamber inquiry. The atmosphere crackles with a new kind of dread. By midday, you're summoned. The summons itself is an accusation. A eunuch recites your name in the voice of a funeral bell. You are led down twisting corridors, past guards whose spears glitter in the slanting sun. In the infamous Whispering Gallery, a place where walls seem to carry secrets, other servants are already waiting. Some kneel, some stare at the floor, some weep quietly. You recognize a few from last night's ritual. Not all were supposed to be here. But here's where it gets worse. This is not merely a test of etiquette or talent. The Empress's enemies, real or imagined, are subjected to intimate interrogations, humiliations designed to break not only their reputations, but their minds. In the hall, the interrogator is waiting. Lai Chen, the dreaded head of the secret police. His name is a curse in the city. He sits beside a brazier, fingers stained with ink and blood, a stack of confession forms by his side. One by one, your peers are questioned, asked to describe not only their loyalties, but their most private encounters, their moments of weakness, their desires. You try to shrink into yourself, but it's no use. The palace knows everything. The new Book of Tang preserves the horror of these purges. Rival concubines forced to describe their dreams. Officials asked about their secret lovers. Sons compelled to betray fathers under threat of torture. The most damning testimony? That someone somewhere failed to please the Empress, or worse, pleased her too well, and so became a threat. Suddenly, your name is called. The room stills. You kneel before Lai Junqian. His questions are soft, almost gentle, but each answer is a blade. Who shared your bed last night? Did you see anyone leave the Hall of Eternal Life after the candles burned down? Did you hear anyone speak ill of Her Majesty's pleasure? You answer, voice barely audible, choosing your words with surgical care. The wrong phrase could end your life. But here is the truly twisted revelation. The most loyal are not spared. Purges become theater, humiliation the currency of control. The Empress orchestrates these inquisitions like performances. According to imperial decrees read aloud in the tribunal, those who confess impure intentions must parade through the palace, heads shaved, wearing shame-inscribed sashes. Even noble families are destroyed, wives stripped of titles, sons exiled, mothers made to watch as their children are accused of bedchamber crimes. As the afternoon sun bleeds red through the latticework, you watch a woman you once envied. Madame Wei, a consort famous for her poetry, led away for re-education. Her crime? Failing to kneel quickly enough when summoned to the Empress's bath. The records say she was found dead within the month, an apparent suicide. But no one truly believes it. In Wu Zetian's palace, even death is another stage for humiliation. What happens next is almost unthinkable. Sometimes purges are conducted in public. You recall the story of Shangguan Wan'er's cousin, a talented scholar accused of gossip. He was summoned before a gathering of court ladies and forced to crawl on his knees, reciting apologies for imagined affairs. The courtiers laughed and averted their eyes. The punishment was not just social death. It was designed to erase the very memory of dignity. But the palace itself is the ultimate accomplice. Its twisting passageways conceal punishment rooms, each with their own reputation. There is the Jade Cellar, used for forced confessions, the Chamber of Silence, where even the guards refuse to linger. On some nights, the Empress herself appears, her expression unreadable, her presence alone enough to reduce generals to tears. She may order a rival stripped and paraded before the guards, demanding acts of submission so degrading that those forced to watch cannot meet each other's eyes for weeks. Legal codes are twisted to enable these horrors. An imperial edict is read aloud. Let none forget, the bedchamber is the root of loyalty. All who betray its sanctity betray the empire. You realize the entire court has become a machinery of surveillance and ritualized shame. Even Buddhist monks are conscripted as informants, reporting impurities heard during confession. The lines between faith, law, and private life vanish in the shadow of Wu Zetian's suspicion. But here's the question no one dares to voice. What does it do to a person, to a nation, when humiliation becomes law? In these corridors, trust dissolves. Love curdles into fear. To survive is to surrender, again and again, until you forget what it felt like to be unafraid. The sun sets, and the survivors are dismissed. You stumble back to your room, numb with exhaustion. The scent of peonies lingers, mocking, cloying, everywhere. The day's purge has left new vacancies. The palace seems larger, more echoing. You understand, with cold certainty, that every humiliation is a warning to those still living. The Empress sees everything, and nothing is beneath her. And as darkness falls, a single message beats in your mind. No one, not even her own blood, is truly safe tonight. Night has reclaimed the palace, but sleep is a memory no one expects. You lie motionless on your thin mat, listening for footsteps in the outer hall, a signal that you too have been chosen for tonight's punishment or favor. There is no difference now. Every summons carries the same icy terror. In Wu Zetian's world, pleasure and pain are two sides of the same coin, and both are weapons. Tonight, the machinery grinds at its most brutal. The infamous final selection is underway, a ritual whispered about by every servant and noble alike. You are called to witness. It is not an invitation. It is a demand. The corridor to the Chamber of Silence is crowded with trembling courtiers, eunuchs, and even Buddhist monks drafted for the spectacle. The air itself is thick with dread. You are forced to stand in the front row, but here's where it gets worse. Those summoned have already been marked, some for a single careless word, others for nothing at all. The chamber is lit by torches that cast everything in wavering shadows. At the center, a row of kneeling figures. You recognize them. An official who once helped you with a petition, a maid whose laughter echoed in happier days, even a distant cousin of the Empress herself. Their crime? Failure to satisfy, real or imagined. The punishments are public and ritualized. First comes humiliation. Heads shaved, faces smeared with ashes, wrists bound in silken cords. The crowd is commanded to watch as the accused are forced to confess their bedchamber crimes in excruciating detail. The accusations are grotesque. An unguarded glance, a clumsy touch, a rumor overheard in the bathhouse. For each supposed offense, the penalty escalates. Lashes with a bamboo rod, forced kneeling on sharp stones. Or, for the most unlucky, the dreaded red sash of execution. But the ritual is not complete without the presence of the Empress herself. Wu Zetian enters in silence, her robes trailing like thunderclouds, her eyes fixed on the trembling victims. The entire room drops to their knees. She says nothing at first, merely raises a single finger. The first punishment begins. You cannot look away. You see a young woman forced to bow until her forehead bleeds. An old scholar stripped and paraded around the chamber, laughter and jeers echoing off the walls. At the Empress's signal, two are dragged away. You know what that means. The guards will return alone, and here is where the horror peaks. Wu Zetian's personal interventions are legend. Some nights, she singles out a favorite and offers them mercy. A night in her private quarters, rumored to be worse than death for those who displease her. On others, she demands the public execution of a rival, the final blow delivered by a former lover or a family member, ensuring that guilt is shared, that loyalty is severed forever. The records of Buddhist monks, forced to witness and sometimes officiate these purges, survive in brittle scrolls. The jade chamber ran with tears and blood, one wrote, and the sound of weeping was never far from the bell of meditation. Tang legal codes were revised again and again to justify these spectacles. Decrees making bedchamber rebellion a capital offense, punishable by torture, exile, or the infamous death by 1,000 cuts. But what chills you most is the normalization of it all. Society adapts. Palace officials barter for favorable positions at these rituals. Eunuchs boast about their roles as executioners or confessors. Buddhist clergy, once neutral, are now assigned to catalog sins, their ledgers overflowing with confessions extracted under duress. Even visiting foreign envoys, Japanese, Koreans, Persians, record what they saw in letters home, aghast that the world's greatest empire would display such calculated cruelty. But even that isn't enough to satisfy the Empress's need for control. New rituals emerge. The circle of shame, in which children of disgraced officials are paraded through the streets, the crowd encouraged to spit or curse. Sometimes, those who escape execution are instead rewarded with menial posts, condemned to a lifetime of invisible servitude. Every level of society is implicated, from the lowliest cook to the highest prince. No one is untouched. You see the toll on the survivors. Some grow silent, hollow-eyed, moving like ghosts through the marble halls. Others harden, learning to preempt humiliation by denouncing rivals before they can be denounced themselves. You realize the system feeds on fear, each ritual tightening the Empress's grip, teaching everyone that suffering is ordinary, that shame is the price of life itself. And then you see it, a mother clinging to her son as he is dragged away, her cries swallowed by the walls. The sound follows you long after the ceremony ends. Later, in the emptiness of your room, you understand that what happened tonight will happen again and again. The palace has become an engine of terror, refined, systematic, and worst of all, accepted. Outside, dawn is breaking. The palace resumes its mask of serenity. Peonies bloom, courtiers chatter, and incense burns. But beneath it all, Wu Zetian's reign has transformed the Tang dynasty into a place where cruelty is routine, where love is a liability, and where survival means surrendering a piece of yourself, night after night, to the machinery of humiliation and power. The final test arrives without warning. You are summoned long before dawn, the sky outside the palace still black as lacquer. The corridors are colder than you remember, the silence so absolute you can hear your own breath. Two eunuchs flank you, their faces emotionless as stone. You know what this summons means. This is the final selection, the Empress's ultimate ritual of power, the moment where humiliation and obedience reach their purest form. You are led into a chamber you've never seen before. Its doors are carved with dragons and phoenixes locked in endless battle. Inside, the scent of sandalwood is nearly choking. The walls are hung with tapestries depicting legendary queens and forgotten concubines, faces beautiful, eyes haunted. The only light comes from a single golden lamp suspended above a low jade platform, and there, at its center, sits Wu Zetian herself. She studies you with that infamous gaze, piercing, hungry, amused. Tonight, the audience is smaller. A handful of her most trusted confidants, two senior eunuchs, and the infamous Zhang brothers, their faces carefully blank. You kneel so low, your forehead touches the mat, but the Empress gestures for you to rise. Tonight, she intones, the empire itself waits to see how loyalty endures. The ritual begins in silence. One by one, you and the other finalists are made to stand before the court, each ordered to recount your most private fears and confessions. Wu Zetian listens intently, fingers tapping a quiet rhythm on her armrest. Each confession is met not with comfort, but with laughter, scorn, or worst of all, icy silence. When your turn comes, your voice shakes so badly you barely recognize yourself. You speak of duty, of love for your family, of your willingness to do anything to survive. The Empress's lips curl in the faintest smile. But here comes the most shocking revelation. You are ordered to participate in the Empress's personal loyalty ritual, a scenario so degrading, so intimate that you can hardly believe it is real. You and a rival are forced to reenact a scene from the founding legends. The moment when a king's favorite concubine was ordered to betray her closest friend for the glory of the state. It is no longer theater. Before the court, you must choose: betray a companion or endure a punishment so severe it will mark you forever. You hesitate. The Empress waits, her eyes glittering with delight. Every eye is on you. The silence is suffocating. Finally, your rival breaks, naming you as the traitor. The audience murmurs. Wu Zetian nods. So it is with power, she declares. There is no room for innocence. The punishment is swift. Public shaming, a fresh mark of humiliation. You realize, as your head is shaved and the court jeers, that the final victory in this palace is simply surviving with your soul intact. And now, the lesson is complete. For years, this system has devoured generations. Named rivals like Shangguan Wanner, accused of seduction and intrigue. Crown Prince Li Xian, driven to suicide by allegations of bedchamber conspiracy. Even Buddhist monks, once revered as neutral, are forced to preside over confessions that strip the last dignity from the condemned. The machinery of terror is complete, institutionalized, and justified by law, ritual, and fear. But here's the last, most disturbing turn. Wu Zetian's reign does not destroy love or desire. It distorts them. Families are broken. Trust is poison. And every form of intimacy, sexual, parental, even spiritual, is bent to the needs of the throne. Those who adapt survive, but at the cost of becoming complicit. Officials bargain for roles in the rituals. Mothers offer up daughters. Brothers betray brothers, all to escape the next purge. The Tang dynasty, once famed for its poetry and beauty, becomes infamous for its surveillance and shame. When the Empress finally departs, the court scatters like shadows before the sun. You remain on your knees, head pounding, body trembling. You have survived, but you know you are not the same. In the echoing quiet, you remember a line from a forbidden poem scratched onto a palace wall by a forgotten maid. All that is beautiful must first be broken. That is the legacy of Wu Zetian. The years pass. The Empress grows older, her rituals more desperate, her need for control consuming everything around her. The system she created outlasts her, spreading through the court, infecting every level of society. Even after her death, her successors preserved many of her methods, fearing that without them, the dynasty itself will collapse. In private, the survivors tell stories, not of love or poetry, but of nights in the chamber of silence, of betrayals and humiliations, of the price paid simply to wake up alive. But as you leave the palace, the sun finally rising over Luoyang, you realize that the story does not end here. The legacy of Wu Zetian's reign shapes the world beyond the palace walls. The machinery of control, of surveillance, of intimacy twisted into power does not vanish. It adapts, resurfaces in other dynasties, other courts, other centuries. The lesson of the Tang. When rulers claim your body as proof of your loyalty, nothing is sacred and everything can be broken. You came into this story thinking of Wu Zetian as a legend, China's only empress, a woman who shattered barriers. But now you see the deeper truth. Power, unchecked, will turn intimacy into a weapon and shame into law. If this journey has awakened your hunger to see past the myths, to uncover the realities empires wanted buried, subscribe now. Here, you will keep discovering the forbidden truths that history tried to erase and claim the knowledge that others feared to reveal. As you step beyond the palace gates, the last echo of the ritual fading behind you, you know that survival comes at a price. But the truth endures, waiting to be found by those willing to confront the darkness at the heart of power.